Hello. Welcome back to the OpenJazz Project. Today's topic is going to be seventh chords. Seventh chords are the most fundamental idea in music theory that allows us to transcend from classical harmony to jazz harmony and also to expand our harmonic vocabulary. We need to understand this very well today because without this, we can't move on. Now, seventh chords are, first of all, chords that have four notes in them. Contrary to the triads we know of, that only have the root, the third, and the fifth in them. You may have guessed, because it's in the name after all, the seventh chord has the 7 in it. And how do I know that this would be a 7? It's because I can take the major scale and count up. And if you start from C, you want to beat a C7 chord, you just count up to the 7 and you add it into the chord. Just how we have categories for the triads, for example, major, augmented, minor, diminished, and so on and so forth, we have the same thing for our seventh chords. And let's see what that would be. The major 7 chord is essentially a major triad, and we add the major 7. So if you want to build it from the root, you have the root, the major third, the perfect fifth, and the major 7. And I have listed here the most important symbols that you will come across. And what I want you to do is take a look at chord symbols and be able to identify what chord that is and what notes it would include. So if you see a C major 7, it would be the major triad with a major 7. Or if you want to build it step by step, you can take the root, major third, perfect fifth, major 7. Now moving on, we'll have the minor 7 chord. And the minor 7 chord would be a minor triad, adding the minor 7 this time. Again, you can build it off from the root by saying we have root, minor third, and perfect fifth, minor 7. This works, of course, for any chord, so we can transpose it, say we need an F minor 7. We build the minor third, perfect fifth, and minor 7. Now, if you're not really used to the seventh intervals, what you can do is think the major 7 as the note a half step below the root, and the minor 7 would be a whole step below the root. So, if we go half step below the root, we'll have the major 7, and if we go whole step below the root, we have the minor 7. Moving on, we have the dominant 7 chord, and there's only one symbol for it, as you can see. And the dominant 7 would be a major triad, including the minor 7. It has this tritone over here that creates dissonance, but it's a chord that you come across frequently in classical music as well, or even before that, even in Baroque, I think. Don't quote me on that. Any music theory nerds, you can reply in the comments if that's the case indeed, or if I'm talking out of my head here. So again, building this analytically, it would be the root, major third, perfect fifth, minor 7. Then we have a half-diminished. This is a trickier chord. It's essentially a diminished triad, so minor third and then the diminished fifth, and we add the minor 7. You can also see there's the symbol minor 7 flat 5 for this, and that would be because if we take a minor 7 chord, the C minor 7, and we add a flat to our 5, we end up with the exact same set of notes. So these symbols are interchangeable. Now you can think this of a minor third, and then stacking another minor third, and then stacking a major third, if that is more suitable for you. Now moving on, we have the fully diminished 7th, and the diminished 7th is again a diminished triad, and we add the diminished 7th. Now what would the diminished 7th be? We'll have the major 7, the minor 7. If we add another flat to that 7, it becomes a diminished 7th. And don't confuse this with the major 6 interval. It's an harmonically equivalent. it's the same sound as the diminished 7. Now we're not going to focus too much on harmonic equivalence. We only care about the shapes of the chords for now. But you need to understand how we build this. So I want you to think of this as a minor third, then we stack another minor third, and then we stack another minor third on top. Essentially, diminished chords are stacks of minor thirds. And as you can see, this pattern here repeats. So if we go up another minor third, back to our root, third, fifth, seventh. Now, I want to talk about something called harmonizing the major scale. And what harmonizing something means is we take a note from a specific scale and we build chords based on that note. So if we take a C major scale, we can build chords, as you can see, from every note of the scale. We have a root note of C, then the root note of D, root note of E, and so on and so forth. The rule here is we're going to build diatonic chords, and diatonic means that we have chords built from only the notes of the scale. For example, this would not be a diatonic chord in the key of C because we have this A flat here that's not part of the C major scale. So a Roman numeral number 1 would mean that we have the chord number 1 that starts from the first scale degree. If we start from C, our first scale degree, we have our third, our fifth, and our seventh. And now we don't build chords based on our intuition. We use the third, the fifth, and the seventh available in the C major scale. Again, a C dominant chord would not be diatonic because we have the minor 7 here and it's not part of the C major scale. Moving on, we have our D minor 7. And why is this a minor 7? Well, we have minor third, perfect fifth, minor 7. Again, our 3 chords now will have another minor 7 chord. Again, minor third, minor 7. We end in our 4 chord, which is again major 7. And this is the interesting part. Our 5 chord is the dominant 7, and it makes sense because this is the dominant chord in the scale of C major. The 5 chord is the dominant, and that's where it got the name dominant 7, because in classical music they would use a 7th chord for the dominant. Moving on, our 6th chord will be a minor 7, and then again it gets a bit interesting. Our 7th chord is a half diminished. This would be a diminished, and then we have the minor 7 here. And we return back to our tonic. Hopefully you are a bit familiar with this, because it's something we do in classical theory. Our 1 chord, our 4 and our 5 are major chords. Then the 2, the 3 and the 6 are minor chords. And the 7th chord is a diminished chord. Now we just add the 7 in all these chords. And we have the major 7, minor, minor, major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and back to the tonic. We can do the exact same thing for the minor scale. I picked A minor because it's the exact same thing as C major as far as notes are concerned. It's what we call the relative minor, and you would expect the chords to be exactly the same. After all, it's the same notes. The only thing changing would be that now our first chord would be A minor instead of C, but then we have the B half diminished, C major, D minor 7, and when we arrive to the E, now our E chord here, the 5 chord, normally would be a minor 7 if we harmonize the natural minor, but remember we have the leading tone, and the leading tone is we augment this note over here, which is the 7th, because we want it to resolve chromatically to our tonic. It's the same thing from classical music. We would have the triad, and it would be a dominant, the dominant would be a major triad instead of a minor one, because we want this resolution. Now we have the same thing, but with 7ths. So don't forget the leading tone, which is of course borrowed from the harmonic minor. And then we progress with the rest of the chords as normal. We would have an F major 7, a G dominant, and an A minor 7. Now notice that we have two dominant chords in the A minor scale, and any minor scale harmonized like that, it will be the 7 chord and of course the 5 chord, the dominant. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you understood the material. Make sure to leave a comment if you have any questions and subscribe if you don't want to miss any future videos. Until then, happy practicing.